category.
The high school. Yeah, we
We're working it out live.
Level.
You know, you guys know how it is. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We're here for another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, every day we answer one practical question about work. And I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future work. We love having guests here to give us views on things. And today, I feel like I often feel these things are special for different reasons. But Maui, I mean, the first time we met, I think I was 19, something like that. I mean, we were children. And we worked together doing some public service work. And Maui Asghedam is a founder who created a company in the ed tech space that does social and emotional learning, primarily some other things too. Most widely, kind of pioneered the category, pioneered social emotional learning online as well. Probably most widely used in the US at the high school level. Maui Learning sold to ACT. And then before that, I remember you were just telling your life story to people. And, spoken to whatever it is, thousand plus audiences. And so I just had this myself. So this question's like really alive for me right now, which is we all learn how to like talk in meetings at some point. You learn it along the way. But then there's a different kind of an experience where you present and it's a lot of people, like let's say 1,000 people, an audience, an auditorium full of people. And it's like, you heard you're supposed to imagine them in their underwear, but that doesn't feel so appropriate or useful. And so Maui, would love whatever guidance, wisdom you have on how do you prepare for presenting to an enormous room full of people.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here with you. Ditto on everything. And, it's just a completely different beast, Roy, because you're in a small room with 8, 9 people. You can look at them. If the tech goes out, you might be able to share a printout with them. And when you're with 1,000 plus people, one of the things I share with you in preparing is it's the difference between walking your dog and walking your elephant.
Yeah, so what did you mean by that? I was like, okay, that's cool. I want to understand that. Let's force him to talk about that.
Yeah, like your dog's not going to step on you and crush you. Your dog's not going to go off in some direction that you can't control very easily. But all those things can happen very easily with a large audience. So something, for example. Something simple. I was doing a presentation with our second biggest client. Had the the CEO there, had everyone there. All their top folks were there, and the tech goes out. We were supposed to be working together 4 or 5 hours. So, for example, going to any big presentation like that, Roy, I always have 2 presentations I'm ready for. One with the PowerPoint completely gone, and one with the PowerPoint there. So I'll have my stories ready. I'll have it because especially if it's a high stakes one. I would say the difference between an amateur and professional, Roy, is the professional is always ready for things to go wrong. They anticipate them and they can improvise, and they won't tell the audience something like, oh yeah, well, this would have been a good presentation if X hadn't happened. They say that in front of the audience sometimes. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the concept in technology of graceful degradation, of when like some software doesn't work, and instead of it all just crashing, it has some fail safe that it comes over. But like, okay, let's go back to your dog versus elephant. So I totally get the elephant is powerful. It is unpredictable. It's harder to communicate with it. I've had that experience like moderating a panel, and you think you say something innocuous, and all of a sudden you hear this like, how do you walk an elephant? Like, I don't know how to walk an elephant. Yeah. So how do you walk an elephant?
So I very carefully. Okay. So what I do is, the way I approach it, Roy, is in the first, they tell me speak on this. Maui wants you to present on this. And my only goal in the first few minutes is I want them to think, okay, I like this person. I'm not going to talk about my product. I need to make some sort of emotional connection with them. And if I don't do that, it's toast. I'm going to lose the 30 or 40%. They're going to start with their phone. They're going to say, okay, this is just another stand. You want to interrupt whatever's in their head. And so I do that sometimes just by start off in a fake African accent. So originally from Ethiopia. So I'll be like, I'm my brother and sister. It's a good day to be here with you today. You are a good one, Roy Bahat, the #1 VC in the world. Man. That's a bad Nigerian accent.
I'm getting canceled on this thing, man. Oh my gosh. Only because of you walking as a refugee can you make such jokes. But keep going. I'm listening.
You got to mess with them and make them think it's gonna be different. Interrupt it, and then let's say you can't really ask an audience that big it's difficult to do a lot of interactive activities with them, Roy, because if you ask them all to stand up and all to sit down, it may take 8 minutes for them to do that.
Totally.
By the time so you have to come up with ways to engage, because what you don't want to do is talk directly at them for 40 minutes. So the way you do it, Roy, is I'll structure in along the way, kind of reflection questions. I'll ask them to think in their head. Have you ever thought about this? I'll ask them to, I'll have I'll put a slide up with 3 options. And I'll say, hey, which one? Because you want to have state changes along the way, right? Where they're not just listening to the same monotonous thing. So you have to do that differently with an audience of 5,000 than an audience of 50 or 20, where you can kind of just eyeball the room, let people talk, get up and do a bio break, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So what I'm hearing is, obviously prepare, but you can't improvise as easily because the reactions of the audience to things are going to be unpredictable. Yeah. I've definitely sensed that. I also heard you say something really powerful, which is you have your stories ready. Like so many people, when they're talking to a group, they just think I'm here to deliver the content. And you talked about being likable in the beginning, creating an emotional bond, appropriately or otherwise. But then you also talked about stories. And one of the things I found is the human brain is just wired for story, for conflict between characters, and for the specificity of individuals. I have a coach, she calls it the Fuji apple from last Tuesday. It's like if I said, hey, I got an apple, like I don't know if I'll remember that, but I have that Fuji apple that you bit into last Tuesday that was a little too hard, you're gonna remember. And so that specificity and nuance brings it to life. The other thing that I hear you saying is you can interact and have an ebb and flow, but because the numbers are so much bigger of the people, and there's also this kind of collective energy in the room, the nature of the interaction is much more subtle. You know, it's much more internal. And I've definitely felt that, like, great speakers can, you know, read the room, but it prompts really refinements in what they do. The other thing that I've just found is, you know, if you're speaking to somebody one-on-one, we're all trained by life in the back and forth of that. But getting an accurate read on how you will seem to a large group is surprisingly difficult. And so those are the cases where I've just found having others observe me, either like, you know, we did this presentation, we must have run through it with our whole team 6 times. And 1 or 2 of those times were so painful for me because it was in rough shape. But, you know, you need to hear people say, you know, that's the part where I got bored. And you're like, really? I love that part. It's like, if they're bored, I don't care if you love it, they're going to tune out.
Practice is critical. What you're saying, getting that feedback. And one of the things I do, Roy, is I'll test out some interactive activities with an audience of 100, then 200, then 500, and I'll ladder it up. So you build it up. So for example, one activity that works really well that I tested like that is on empathy, where I'll have the front row do something, the rest of the audience doesn't do it, and then I ask them to compare what they felt. Well, that's manageable because I can control the front row standing up and the rest of the folks are sitting down. So you're not getting the huge rustle of the elephant kind of running all over the place. You're able to have that reflective of movement. So those kind of things you can do, but you want to experiment on them.
I love it. All right. Well, that is not advice. This is not advice of what we say, because most people, when they're telling you what to do, they're really telling you how to live their life, because they're trying to get you to justify the choices they made. I mean, imagine like, oh, I'd suggest you do this. You do it completely differently. It works. It's like, well, that's not very nice for my ego. And so most advice comes from the fragile ego of the giver. So we call it This Is Not Advice. And Maui, I would love to just keep doing these, and I will be seeing you in your part of the world very soon. You're part of the country. It's not a different part of the world, although the Midwest, you know, for us coastal types, it does feel really different. But thank you, Maui. I really appreciate it. And like, what a joy to get to like do stuff like this after all these years.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Roy. I look forward to getting